Hey Panthers, we are taking a look at 3-4 and 3-5 today. 3-4 is covering division with whole integers, and 3-5 is division with decimal integers. So I'm going to combine them today because I am confident that you can handle two sections in one today. So as always, please make sure you have your note packet in front of you, you have your pencil, highlighter would be fabulous, and you are ready to go. So, as always, there are some certain steps that you need to follow, and as I always tell you, you need to learn how to compartmentalize the steps. You need to, when you see an addition problem, think about what the steps are for that. When you see a subtraction problem, what are the steps for that? When you see a multiplication problem, what do I do? And then today, when you see a division problem, we're going to go through the steps right now that you need to follow in order to arrive at the correct answer. So let's start with the first step here. The first thing you need to do, again, we're working with negative decimals here. So we need to determine if your answer is going to be positive or negative. And if you can include this in your notes, remember, an even number of negative signs is positive. An odd number of negatives gives you a negative answer. And again, that's the first thing to do, because a lot of times Panthers students will go through the problem and get everything right as far as the division is concerned, but they forget to include the negative sign. So let's do that at the beginning. And if you determine that your answer is going to be a negative, go ahead and put the negative sign directly on the quotient so you don't forget that simple little step, which can change your whole answer. So once you've determined if it's positive or negative, you're going to set up your long division problem. And this, Panthers, please, if you have a highlight this section. This is very important and one of the biggest mistakes that I see from 7th graders every single year. The first number in your division problem is called the dividend, okay? When you write a long division problem, that first number or the dividend goes underneath your long division bar, okay? The second number is called the divisor. This is the number that you are dividing by. The divisor always goes on the outside, okay? And a lot of times students mix these up. And as we know, the answer to a division problem is called a quotient, and the quotient is the answer, and that is written on top. One thing I do want to remind you, sometimes students see a problem, let's say 12 divided by 4, okay? And sometimes I'll have students who see 4 divided by 12. And I just want to remind you that you can take a small number and divide it by a large number. Your answer is just going to be pretty close to 0. So don't get those mixed up. Don't flip-flop them. You can take a small number and divide it by a large number. Okay, so once you have your division problem set up correctly, remember dividend underneath, divisor outside, you have to divide by a whole number, okay? For instance, if we had, 12 divided by 4, we can solve this pretty quickly. But if I had 12 divided by 4/10, divisor is not whole, and it's going to make it very difficult for us because I don't know about you, but you probably don't know your multiples of 4/10 like you know your multiples of 4. So when you're going through the division process, the divisor must be a whole number. And here's all that you have to do, Panthers. Let's say we have 5 8/10 divided by 1 2/10, okay? Which number's my divisor? Hopefully you're saying 1 2/10, okay? This is not a whole number, so again, I need to divide by a whole number. Here's what you need to do. Move your decimal in your divisor to the right until you create a whole number. I had to move it one time to the right to get 12. And if you move it once in your divisor, you must also move it in your dividend one time. So this now becomes 58. And now we can go ahead and divide because we're dividing by 12. And today you're going to do a little activity prior to your practice sheet that's going to help you understand why we're able to do this. So again, if your divisor is not a whole number, you need to move the decimal point to the right to create a whole number. You might have to move it once, you might have to move it several times. And as many times as you move it in your divisor, you must also move the same number in your dividend. Okay, let's continue, okay? And the last thing, bring the decimal in your dividend up to the quotient line. So if you had 58 divided by 12, well, 58 is a whole number, so we know the decimal's at the end. Bring it right up to your quotient line. If you had 3 4/10 divided by 8, again, 8 is whole, so move your decimal point right up to the quotient line and proceed as division as you normally would. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of problems here, starting with letter A. First thing is to look at your negatives. I have 2 negatives, which is even, so I know my answer is going to be a positive. I'm going to put that down there now so I don't forget. And then I am going to take a look at my divisor. My divisor has to be a whole number. This is a whole integer, so we are good to go. I can go ahead and set up my problem. When you do your division, you don't need to include your negative signs because we've already determined that our answer is going to be positive. You do obviously need your decimals though. So again, this is 36 and 75 hundredths divided by 7. Again, my divisor's whole, so I go ahead and move my decimal up to my quotient line, and I begin. 7 does not go into 3, but it does go into 36. It goes into 36 5 whole times. The 5 goes above the 6 because that's what I divided into. 5 times 7 is 35. Subtract, and then I bring down the next number. Regardless of that decimal point being there, you just keep bringing down the digits until you can't bring down any more. 7, now I start all over. 7 goes into 17. 2 times, I put the 2 above the 7 because that's the number that I brought down. 2 times 7 is 14. When I subtract, I get a remainder of 3. I'm not done yet because I still have another digit to bring down, and now I start all over. 7 goes into 35, 5 whole times without a remainder. So I am done. I'm going to recall that my answer is a positive, and I'm going to rewrite my answer nice and cleanly, and I'm going to box it or circle it so it kind of stands out. And that's what you do, Panthers. Okay? Let's take a look at B. I have 1 negative sign, which is odd, so I know my answer is negative. We need to remember that. My divisor is a whole number, so I am ready to go ahead and set up my long division problem. I have 0 and 87 hundredths divided by 3. Since my divisor is whole, I can go ahead and bring my decimal point up to my quotient line and begin dividing. Does 3 go into 0? 0 times. How about 8? 3 goes into 8. 2 whole times. 2 times 3 is 6. Subtract, I get 2. Bring down the next digit, which is 7. 3 goes into 27 9 times. I write the 9 right above the 7 that I brought down, and it goes in evenly, so I have no remainder. And again, I'm going to remind myself that my answer is a negative, so I'm going to rewrite it negative 0 and 29 hundredths. Panthers, one thing we mentioned yesterday, but I'm going to mention to you again. Whenever you don't have a number in the ones place value, make sure you are writing in a 0. Again, if you do not have a number in the ones place value, you need to add that 0. I'm going to go ahead and skip letter C just to save some time. Let's go down to some numbers where we're dividing by decimals. Once again, take a look at the negative signs. I have 1, which is odd, so I know my answer is going to be a negative. I have to take a look at my divisor. My divisor is not a whole number here, so I need to move my decimal to the right until I get a whole number. Well, if I move it once here, this now becomes 9. Now remember, Panthers, if I move it once in my divisor, I also have to move it once in my dividend. So this will also change to 75 and 6/10. Now that my divisor is whole, I am ready to set up my long division problem. 75 and 6/10 divided by 9. Again, my divisor's whole, so I'm going to bring my decimal point up to the quotient line, and I'm going to begin dividing. 9 goes into 75, 8 whole times without going over. 8 times 9 is 72. Subtract. I have a number to bring down. Start over. 9 goes into 36, 4 whole times. I wrote the 4 right above the 6 that I brought down. 4 times 9 is 36, and I have nothing left. Again, I have to remember my final answer is going to be a negative, so my answer is negative 8 and 4/10. And letter E, we're going to count our negatives. I have an even number, so I know my answer is going to be positive. My divisor is not a whole number. If I move the decimal point once to the right, I get 46, and because I moved it once to the right in my divisor, I must move it once to the right in my dividend, and this now will become 8 and 28/100. Now that my divisor is whole, I can go ahead and set up my long division problem. Again, reminding that we can divide by larger numbers. Since my divisor is whole, I'm going to move my decimal point right up to my quotient line, make it nice and big, and I'm going to begin. 46 does not go into 8, so I'm going to put a 0 there. Okay. And then how about 82? 46 goes into 82 one whole time. 1 times 46 is 46. When I subtract here, I get 36 left over. When I bring down the next number, I get 368. Now, some of you, again, may be struggling a little bit with this. When you're doing division and you're starting to work with these bigger numbers, try to use estimation. 46 times 10 would be 460, so I know 10 is too big. If I went down, let's say about 46, or I'm going to round to 50. Let's round 46 to 50. This approximately would go into 368. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. We've got a little bit left over, so I'm going to try 8. 8 times 6 is 48. 8 times 4 is 12, plus 8 times 4 is 32, plus the 4 we carried over is 36. Take a look at that. Okay, so again, we know our answer is positive. I'm going to rewrite it nice and cleanly. We get an answer of 0 and 8/10. This problem here, I'm just going to set up for you. If I move the decimal once here, I get 12. 6, there is no decimal point. It's a whole number, so we know the decimal point's here. If I move it over, I'm going to fill this in with a 0. So this problem becomes 60 divided by 12. And to finish up here with the example, let's use the cube method. I'm going to circle important numbers. Eric paid $227.50 to rent a car. The fee to rent the car was $32.50 per day. For how long did Eric rent the car? What are we solving for? For how long? Long would be, in this case, we're talking about days. Okay. I'm gonna box the question. For how long did Eric rent the car? Okay, and the rest is not important. So if I stop and think about this problem, I have a total bill of $227.50, and I'm dividing it by the amount per day. And when I do that, I should know the number of days Eric rented his car. So Panthers, if I look at my divisor, if I move it